Hi scholars, we've already read the text Together the Crab, and if you're here it's because you watched all of my teacher model or the video for fiction context clues. Our words that we're looking for our practice are curious, complain, and familiar. I want you to pause the video and go ahead in the text and highlight those three words: curious, complain, and familiar. All right, if you've pressed play, then you have highlighted these three words: complain, familiar, and curious. Think about the first step. If our first word is curious, what do we need to do to get clues from the story? You got it. We need to read around the text. Pause the video, read around the text, highlight your clues in your text, and then come and write them inside of this box. Press play when you've done this. All right, if you've pressed play, then hopefully you highlighted these clues. So I go through, and after I read, it wasn't afraid of Miguel at all. At first I pretended I wasn't interested. I am highlighting but because we know that's an important clue word, but I was curious about the crab. Finally, I walked over to Miguel and the crab. So the but is what comes before the but is important because she says, at first I pretended I wasn't interested, but I was curious. So curious must be the opposite. I'm going to put but. I'm going to put opposite of not interested. And then because she's curious, she walks over to Miguel and the crab instead of staying back. So I'm going to put a clue is that she walks over to see the crab. All right. Now, if you haven't already, pause the video, put your clues together, and in this box you need to write, what do you think curious means? Press play after you've written your definition. All right, if you've pressed play and you're back, hopefully you have a definition like this. Curious means interested. I know that because it's the opposite of not interested. And then maybe you put some more details like interested in, let's say, an object. In this case, it's an object. Or maybe you put another word for interested. But if you are confused, you could raise your hand, or let's try the next one and see if it makes more sense. Let's look at complain. So you know it. You need to reread around the word complain. Then you're going to highlight your clues in the text, write them down, and put them together to write down what you think the word means. Don't press play until you're ready to move on. All right, if you're back, you've highlighted the clues in the text. I'm going to show you what I highlighted. So she says, I thought Miguel would complain about having to pick up the crab. There's that word but he happily took the crab back down to the ocean. So she thought that he would complain, but he happily took the crab back down to the ocean. So hopefully you wrote a clue like opposite of happily taking, well, really what they're doing is touching. That's what she thought he wouldn't want to do, is to hold the crab. So I'm going to change mine to opposite of happily touching the crab. Okay, so she's thinking because right in the paragraph where she says you need to pick it up and take it to the ocean right now, I thought Miguel would complain about having to pick up the crab, but he happily took it down to the ocean. So if what he did was happily take it back down to the ocean, then the opposite must be that he wouldn't want to do that. So hopefully in your definition box of what you think the word means, for complain, you wrote not wanting to do something And I think we can just leave it at that. You might have used a little different words. Again, if you're really lost or confused, you can raise your hand. We've got one more to try, the word familiar. So if you haven't highlighted it in the text, go ahead and do it. And you guessed it, we need to read around the word, highlight our clues, write our clues in our graphic organizer, and then put our clues together to say what we think the word familiar means. Pause and then press play when you're done, and we'll go over it. All right, you've pressed play and you're back. So if we read around the words familiar, McWell told me that although this was a new thing for me, he was very familiar with crabs, and he was not worried about the crab at all. There are a couple of clues here that you might have highlighted. So McWell says that this is a new thing for our narrator, for our speaker, but he is familiar with crabs. So whatever familiar means, I think that it's important to note that it's not new to him. And then he keeps saying he was not worried about the crab at all. So I'm going to write for the clues, and you might have written similar ones, that touching crabs was not new, and he was not worried. Okay, so I want to put the clues together, and if I'm working with something that I've worked with before and I'm not worried, then I think that what that means is I'm feeling comfortable. So I think that familiar means something you have done or already know and feels comfortable. Hopefully you wrote a similar answer. Whether you're confused or not, hopefully you've got it and you feel good about it. I want you to raise your hand so I can check your great work before moving on to the exit ticket.